Marvel's What If series was interesting, to say the least. If you've been around this channel long enough, you should know that I'm a big fan of exploring alternate possibilities for stories and characters, although the MCU's attempt at it was met with mixed reception. It's kind of hard to judge the show as a whole given that fan reception tended to vary episode by episode. The common consensus is that the Doctor Strange one was the best, the finale was kind of a mess, and the zombies plotline could and should have been stretched out longer. However, for me, the worst episode of the show outside of the finale has to be What If Thor Were an Only Child? Or, to use the fan name for it, the Party Thor episode. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the premise of this episode exactly. A more light-hearted what if after Doctor Strange, Killmonger, and zombies could definitely bring some much-needed levity before the finale. But I think it brings too much levity. I mean, the Thor franchise has definitely gotten more comedic as time goes on, a decision I'm pretty sure was at least partly inspired by the literally too dark world. But this episode goes out of its way to break logic entirely for the sake of its gags. Let's back up a bit. The premise of this episode revolves around Thor growing up without Loki, resulting in a world where he's even less responsible with his power than he was at the start of the first movie. With Odin entering a magical sleep and Frigga setting off to spend time with some other goddesses, Thor is left alone with his friends on Asgard. But not for long. He and the Warriors 3 soon make their way to Earth to hold what is basically the universe's biggest frat boy party, in which everyone is invited. And I mean everyone. The episode starts out fun enough, but the issues start to rise as basically the entire Marvel Universe comes to join in on this party. A party that lasts for literal weeks, mind you. The main conflict in this episode is that, as you can imagine, Thor's non-stop party basically starts throwing the entire Earth into disarray, to the point that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Captain Marvel get involved to try to stop it. They are, for some reason, the only individuals who seem to be taking the matter even remotely seriously. In the end, the party is only stopped when Frigga arrives on Earth to put a stop to Thor's shenanigans and single-handedly manages to get the rest of the cosmos to turn off their party mode. It's a very typical ending to the stereotypical party episode format, but again, my main issue with it is just how out there and nonsensical things get. I mean, we have some of the biggest antagonistic forces in the universe suddenly putting their evil plans on hold to attend some frat boy god's party. Like, why is Surtur here? Isn't his whole thing that he hates Asgard? Alternate universe or not, Thor being less responsible shouldn't just magically mean the villains are less evil, right? And yet we have the likes of Nebula, still a lackey to Thanos in this universe, goofing off in Vegas with the rest of the cosmos. I could go on and on nitpicking the things I dislike about this episode, but I think my general point is clear. So, instead, let's focus on how it can be improved, shall we? Ultimately, I think the first several minutes of the episode are more or less fine. Thor goes to Earth to party with his Asgardian friends, takes over Vegas for a bit, and yes, I'm even fine with him bringing in a few other races and people from the Nine Realms. But only the ones he has connections with. Frost Giant Loki, the Rock People, maybe even Scourge could make a cameo. Let's keep the characters with wider connections to the MCU, like Grandmaster and Nebula, out of it. Frankly, having too many cameos just takes away from the time you could dedicate to the actual larger plot. And what is that plot, you may ask? Well, the core of the episode is supposed to revolve around Thor partying too hard and learning the consequences of taking things too far. Only, he really doesn't? Captain Marvel shows up to try and stop him, but she straight up loses that fight and the party continues. In the end, Thor is only brought to heel when Frigga starts making for Earth, after which he hurriedly tries to hide all the evidence of the party. It's less of a learning experience as much as it is a, I can be as crazy as I want as long as my mom doesn't find out. No, For an episode like this, I think there needs to be an actual consequence that Thor has to face for partying too hard. And I know exactly what that can be. So, anyone here familiar with a little story called Beowulf? For those who know the legend, you might remember a monster called Grendel, who frequently attacked King Hrothgar's mead hall because the sounds of partying inside disturbed the monster's sleep. Did I mention that Beowulf is a Norse legend, much like the actual Thor? Yeah, I think you guys can see where I'm going with this. Funnily enough, Grendel exists in Marvel Comics, and his backstory is quite similar to that of the legend. Obviously, there's a bit of a discrepancy that the story takes place in Denmark during the 6th century AD, but the MCU has never been completely faithful to the comics, much less mythology. And this is still a what-if story besides. So, here's my proposal. In this universe, Grendel was a dark elf giant hybrid sealed away when King Bor defeated the Dark Elves long ago. Trapped in a seal of enchanted ice deep in Earth's tundra, Grendel has slumbered peacefully for eons, until Thor's party accidentally disturbs the hybrid during some stupid stunt and wakes him up. Grendel proceeds to go on a rampage, making short work of the Warriors 3 and anyone else that dares to try and oppose him. Even Thor's strength proves to barely be a match for this monster, forcing the God of Thunder to seek another solution beyond just brute forcing the problem. Ultimately, it's Jane and her companions that come to Thor's aid, deciphering the ancient runes on Grendel's seal to help Thor re-imprison his enemy. Oh, maybe Loki and the Frost Giants can assist as well, using their magic ice to seal Grendel just like how he was before. In the end, the refrozen Grendel is taken back to Asgard. Thor's party reaches its conclusion, and the Thunder Guard learns a bit of responsibility from his actions. A rather basic story, I know, but one that I feel works far better as a narrative than what we got. We add some actual stakes to the episode, pay homage to another iconic Norse myth, bring in another Marvel character we haven't seen in the MCU yet, and give Party Thor some much needed character development that actually justifies his role in fighting Ultron in the finale. I mean, really, the Watcher could have picked any version of Thor in the universe, and he picked the frat boy. Why not pick one who, I don't know, actually learns to be a bit more responsible earlier on in his life? But that's just my opinion. Anyways, what did you all think? How did you feel about the Party Thor episode? Leave your thoughts down in the comment below, and I'll see you all next time.